and welcome to We Watch Bad Films, the podcast, where we watch bad films so you don't have to. The clue's in the name. It's funny, isn't it? I'm Gary. With me, as always, is Jay.
Hello, everybody.
Jay, good to hear your dulcets. Hey, if you're interested in what we're saying, or if you've got a really terrible film you'd like to suggest we watch, I suggest you go find us on Twitter. That's at We Watch Bad Films. We're also over on Instagram at We Watch Bad Films. You can also, if you like what we're doing and want to help us get some more rentals in the bag, feel free to sling us a Ko-fi at ko-fi.com/WWBFpod. All those links in the description. All donations gratefully received. Thank you so much. If you can't do any of that, that's cool. Recommend us to your friends. If you've got someone in your life who you want to inflict pain on or you know enjoys terrible films, please send our podcast their way. Sharing really helps us out a lot. Jay, I've been to the cinema in a rare turn of events. I went to see, I'm going to get this wrong, Fantastic Beasts, The Secrets of Dumbledore. I think I said it right.
Fantastic Dumbledore, Secrets of the Beast, Part 3.
That's the one. Yeah. Have you seen the Fantastic Beasts films?
I'm just trying to summon up enough energy to answer that question. I've watched one, I think the first one. I nearly fell asleep. I'm not even aware that there were more than one, so it shows how much.
There you go.
Yeah,
I think
it's because Johnny Depp. That's the only reason I know.
Yeah, it's a problem with the whole franchise, really. I think it lacks identity. We're big fans of the Harry Potter world, or Wizarding World, as supposed to call it, in our house. So therefore, we just went to see it straight away. And it's not good. I'm sorry to say. It's really lacking clarity. It's called Fantastic Beasts, and it really wishes it wasn't, because it thinks, oh, we're called Fantastic Beasts, but really I want to be about the Secrets of Dumbledore. So actually, interesting stuff is Dumbledore and his relationship with Grindelwald, which is gone into, but then they're sort of handcuffed by Fantastic Beasts as a premise, and they're like, well, let's do some Fantastic Beast stuff. And then ironically, the best scene in the whole film is revolving around some beasts. The whole thing is very po-faced, it's very straight, and they have this moment of levity in the middle, which involves some great physical, silly acting from what's his name? Newt Scamander. Plays him? Theory of Everything.
Yeah, him.
Good.
Yeah, that one. He's really good. Yeah,
he's really good in everything.
Come on, everybody! This is the competition. Write in and tell us what actor.
So Eddie Redmayne.
Yes.
Does great comic acting in the middle of it, and it's like, a little moment of joy. This is really good. But that's it. It comes and goes, and it's all gone, which is a shame.
Well, I watched the first one, so it's all centered around Eddie Redmayne's character. What's Newt Scamander. Watching the trailer, it's not really about him, and in the poster, it's sort of about Dumbledore's as a younger man, as a model.
Yes. All the performances are great, without exception. They're all really good. When you get a cast together of that caliber, of course it's going to be, but they just don't have a strong enough, clear enough idea to work with. The whole thing is set up as, Grindelwald was a baddie in the last one. Well, we're just going to absolve him of all crimes, and now he can run for ruler of the Wizarding World. And it's just like, it doesn't really know what it wants to do. It feels like it wants to have a conflict in there, and it wants to have an arc through the whole film. But again, it's trying to get back to this idea of Dumbledore and Grindelwald and what their relationship is and was, and the fact that they can't fight each other for complicated reasons. It doesn't really matter. MacGuffin. And it's just not fun. I want it to be more fun.
Yeah, and isn't the script by J.K. Rowling?
It is, and actually this time they brought back Steve Kloves, who worked with her on most of the original Harry Potter films. But I don't know what influence he's had, because it feels a lot like the second one as well, which again was frankly a bit turgid, a bit over complex for its own good, and again really lacking moments of fun and joy. And it
This is
feels like, and I'm not the only person to say this, I've heard this in multiple places, that they should have two series running. They should have one series called Fantastic Beasts, which is a jolly Monster of the Week type franchise, an Indiana Jones type thing of going to find a fantastic beast with Newt Scamander, and a separate film series that's all about Dumbledore's plans to stop Grindelwald mucking up the world. It's actually a lot of parallels with Professor X and Magneto. You know, they're both kind of got the same ideas, but coming at it from a different angle.
I'm just wondering how you get hired by J.K. Rowling and sit next to her while she's writing the story and script that she's created as the world's richest woman, and then you say to her, "Oh, actually, I've got some suggestions for you, J.K. And why don't you change this and change that?" She'll probably just look at you and go, "No," and then continue with her stuff.
I do get the impression she's quite controlling. And
Oh dear. Yeah, confusing. Even looking at the trailer, I was confused as to what's going on. I thought it was called Fantastic Beasts. What's all this like gruff sort of origin story of Dumbledore? I don't understand. And you've watched it and you don't understand. So yeah.
Yeah, I get it. It's just poorly executed, unfortunately. What about you, Jay? Have you been to Ingaskinogaen lately?
One of the things that I've watched recently and I want to discuss with you, The Batman. Have you seen it?
The Batman.
The Batman, yes.
Definitive
Definitely.
character. No,
Yeah.
I haven't. You know what? I can't muster up enthusiasm for another iteration of Batman. I've got nothing against it, and it might be, it might have run away with all the Oscars. I just can't care enough. Am I wrong in that assumption? I mean, you know, what have you found?
No, you're not wrong. There is that sense pervading the whole film. I've heard of a few other people say that even it is a good, well-made film, but the stench of but this is another Batman film hangs heavy over the proceedings. Having said that, it is a good film. It's the best Batman film I've seen since the last few, which can't even remember which ones I've seen. But let me tell you,
including Justice League.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about the Zack Snyder ones. Anything with Batfleck in, I'm discounting Batfleck. He's rubbish. Those ones were rubbish. But no, it's good. It's very good. It's just a shame that it's a Batman film because I'm sort of bored with Batman. But it's really well made. I would say it looks beautiful. It's really well filmed. It kind of reminds me of Joker when we watch Joker. So it's like it's got the darkness of that, but also I loved the visuals of Joker. I love the cinematography. And
Joker was outstanding, and you're right. It looked beautiful in a horrible way. It was all a bit greasy, very 70s. Looked great.
Yeah, and but also you could have any frame of Joker, and it would be a great photograph. And it's the same with the Batman. I think.
And I just want to interject there, and I'm going to put a link to it in the description. There's a really good video from the director describing how he approached the cinematography. Really, really enlightening. Sorry, Jay, carry on.
Good. It's also very well acted. Everyone in it is really good. I will say they've really underused Alfred Pennyworth, who is played by Gollum.
Andy Serkis. I don't think he's played by Gollum, is he? That's a different film.
I'm laughing at the fact that we need a Rolodex of actors' names next to us as we're talking because we keep forgetting them all. It's the game that the audience can play with us, Gary. Remember the actors' names. Who are Gary and Jay talking about?
Well, and you're sitting on a train listening to this and you're screaming at your device like, it's obviously Andy Serkis, you jerks.
Yeah, he's in it almost less than 10 minutes, I would say, but he's in a couple of pivotal scenes. I don't really understand in a 3-hour film why you would hire Andy Serkis and have him barely in it. But other than that, it's all really well done. I think Robert Pattinson is a good Batman, And there is what you don't get with the Christopher Nolan films is they're based in reality, like Christopher Nolan, and they're dark and stuff. But there's an air of how can I describe it? Surreal comic bookness about it, where it's not just reality based. There is a sort of strangeness to it as well. There's an emotional, there's also a gothic element to it, but there's definitely a comic book element, which I'm enjoying. If there's one criticism of the Christopher Nolan films is that they could be a little bit too rooted in reality, because it's a comic book character. I mean, who is going to wander around in a bat suit in real life? No one. I would also say it is, I don't know why the last few films I've seen at the cinema in the last 6 months have all been about 3 hours long, but it seems to be the way things are going. I don't really know why it needs to be 3 hours. It could be less long, but I think it's great. I think it's good. So I'd give it 7 out of 10. It's a shame that it's another Batman film, and it's a shame that it's a bit long, but I think it's very well done.
I believe it's just hit streaming now for a ridiculous price of like £16 to rent. I happened to notice yesterday. When it's not £16 to rent, I will check it out, but not before then.
It's also concurrently playing at the cinema near me at the moment. It seems to be everywhere. You know?
Yeah, I understand it's doing decent box office.
So I think it's worth watching. It's definitely worth watching. It's not. I don't think you'll like it, Gary, as much as Joe.
Yeah. Okay.
I think you'll find it a little bit too Batman-y, but I think it's good, and I think you will get something out of it.
Yeah, I can't stand my Batman films being too Batman-y.
I'm afraid it's time to talk about a bad film. I felt like we should watch another Batman film. There's been many. There's many to choose from, but I'm afraid, and I'm going to apologise to you right from the off, I'm afraid I've decided that we are going to watch 1997's Batman and Robin.
I don't think I ever saw it for some reason. I don't think, and there wasn't a conscious, oh my God, too much Batman at the time. I think it just passed me by.
Well, I've definitely seen it, and I've definitely seen it quite a few times. That does not mean that I remember anything from it, which doesn't bode well.
25 years old, you know, it's not it's old.
It is old, yes, and it certainly comes across as a dated pile of poo. That's what
Sounds like you're pre-reviewing it.
I've already seen it, so I know what it's like, but I feel like I need to flagellate myself for this podcast. So we're going to watch it together, and I'm going to re-watch it, and we're going to sully ourselves with Batman and Robin.
Okay, well, you guys get loads of great stuff out of the trailer. Meanwhile, Joe and I will watch Batman and Robin, and we'll see you on the other side.
My name is Freeze. Learn it well, for it's the chilling sound of your doom.
This is the way the world could end.
Please, show some mercy.
With ice. With a kiss.
With venom. I probably should have mentioned this. I'm poison. Poison ivy.
And the only man who can stop them.
Hi, Freeze. I'm Batman.
Can't do it alone.
Batman will watch his beloved Gotham perish. Bundle up, boys. There's a storm coming. Kill the heroes!
It's the hockey team from hell!
Cool party.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
All right, everyone, chill.
George Clooney.
I'm not the marrying kind.
I know you've had your wild night.
Good night. Wild doesn't quite cover it.
Chris O'Donnell.
Come join me. My garden needs tending.
She loves me and not you, and it's driving you crazy.
This is why Superman works alone.
Uma Thurman.
So many people to kill. So little time.
Alicia Silverstone.
And you are?
Batgirl.
That's not awfully PC. What about Bat Person?
Found the Batcave.
She knows who we are.
Guess we'll just have to kill her.
In a Joel Schumacher film. Strength and courage.
Partners?
Honor.
Partners.
And loyalty. Freedom and justice.
Partners.
It all comes together.
We're going to need a bigger cave.
Batman and Robin.
Well, that was 1997's Batman and Robin, directed by Joel Schumacher. There was a plot, something to do with bad guys, which is Arnold Schwarzenegger playing Mr. Freeze and Uma Thurman playing Poison Ivy, with a spinning turn from Alicia Silverstone as Batgirl. What can I say? It's an older Batman film. Baddies want to do bad things. Batman and Robin save the day. I ain't got time to go over the plot for this. And I'm being brutally honest when I'm not even sure I could. I think if I try to, I'm only using what I know about Mr. Freeze and Poison Ivy from their greater character arcs outside of this to describe what happens. Jay, I didn't like this film. I didn't like this at all.
I was quite amused listening to you trying to do the plot. The plot is absolutely nonsensical. And in fact, the first word I've written down on my notes is nonsense. I mean, Batman. It's called Batman and Robin. They are in it, but basically they are they're barely in it. Everyone else is in it. It's like a pantomime is what it's like. It is utterly stupid.
Pantomime is the word. I mean, I as I said, I hadn't seen it for some reason. I hadn't realised just how bright and camp this one is. You know, in our lifetimes, Jay, we grew up watching repeats of the '66 Batman stuff. You know, the Adam West, which is obviously as high camp as it gets, and then in '89, Tim Burton's Batman is released, and you and I were of an age where all the marketing was funneled straight into our neck holes at full force. I mean, it was inescapable, right? You know, from the Prince soundtrack to people having the Bat logo shaved in their hair to toys, games, everything. It was wall to wall. And then that continues through the 90s. And I hadn't realised the flavour had changed so much for this 97 edition. It also made me realise, I'm pretty sure I've never seen Batman Forever either, the Jim Carrey and Tommy Lee Jones one.
Which I find astounding, Gary, because that was 95 and it would have been massive and you would have been young enough to be interested in it, or at least gone with your friends to see it. I saw that ad infinitum. I really loved the 1989 Batman film. I also loved Batman Returns, even though looking back on it, it's a bit too Tim Burton-y. But I still think it's a really good film.
I watched the '89 Batman 7-8 years ago, and I thought, this is a mess. It's long bits that don't go anywhere. You know, it's a masterpiece compared to what we watch today. This thing.
Well, I think what happened was 1995, they hired Jim Carrey, and that sort of skewered the vibe of the films. But it still had a bit of tension in it. I will also say, you've not seen it, have you, Batman Forever?
No, I'm looking at it. I'm thinking, no, I've never seen it. Obviously, I'm aware of it. It was not a small film. It's not a budget indie release. I remember it, but for some reason, I never saw it.
I will say, I think Jim Carrey's pretty good in it. He's just doing Jim Carrey.
I simply love what you've done with this place. Heavy metal meets house and garden. Ha ha ha! Beautiful. It's so dark and gothic and disgustingly decadent. Yet so bright and chipper and conservative.
I will say Tommy Lee Jones is one of the worst performers of a Batman. No, just any villain anywhere. It is awful.
And it's Tommy Lee Jones, generally watchable.
Yeah, he's a good actor, but yeah, he's playing Two-Face in Batman Forever.
Yes.
And it's like he's just wandered onto set and just been dressed by the costumers and just been given the script. He seems to have no idea what his character is, what he's meant to be doing. He's like leaping around the place, laughing to himself all the time, which is kind of what Jim Carrey's doing, and Jim Carrey's doing it really well. And Tommy Lee Jones seems to have no idea what his character is. It's awful.
Luck! Blind, stupid, simple, doodah, clueless luck!
We're in danger of reviewing the wrong film here. We're trying to review Batman and Robin, and we haven't managed it yet. One huge disappointment I have to say right at the off is I've always been a huge fan of George Clooney. I watched ER when it was on live, and I thought George Clooney was fantastic. As he's developed into an actor, director, and producer, he still makes brilliant choices, and he's just fantastic. If you're going to cast Batman from scratch, you think, well, he's got the Playboy look down, and he's got the chin. He's not necessarily an action star, but other than that, George Clooney should be great, and he's just non-existent in this film. He's not even there.
He's terrible. Well, it's partly to do with the fact that he's got literally nothing to work with.
No, but he's got nothing to do.
He just looks embarrassed the whole time. He's on fine head bobbling turn. He's got that little tick where he sort of
angles his head. Oh, speaking of angling a head, why are so many camera shots in this?
Oh my God! It's like being on an upturned boat half the time. I mean, there's so many Dutch angles. I feel like I'm in Holland. This is Joel Schumacher's fault. I imagine he's trying to emulate a comic book. Basically, he's trying to emulate not just the comic book, but the 1966 TV series.
I can see that. I just found it very distracting in this.
But it doesn't,
I didn't know the point.
Like you said earlier, it doesn't look like it's colourful like the 1966 campy Batman TV series, but also it's too well filmed and too darkly lit and too sort of gritty around the edges for it to look like the campy Batman TV series from the 1966. But then it's not serious enough. It's just all over the place, quite frankly. It doesn't know what its tone is.
What I will say is it's the most 90s film I've ever seen, I think.
It's so 90s.
Whoa.
They just found a list of who's the most successful actors this month in 1997. And we'll just put them on, irrespective of whether they should be playing these characters or whether they're any good at acting. So that is Alicia Silverstone, Chris O'Donnell, George Clooney, Arnold Schwarzenegger, who is kind of on the wane a bit.
I think he was rebuilding himself at this point for what he was going to do next in his career. And then Uma Thurman was reasonably hot off the press of Pulp Fiction, of course.
Yes, and I've heard a lot of reviewers who say actually her performance is probably the most on the nose, but sort of the most knowing. It's almost like she knows that this film is a joke, and she's just wandering around pretending to be Mae West, basically.
I completely agree with them. She's actually really enjoyable to watch. She's lots of fun. What I'm struggling with is what makes her performance good in this. It is the way she's saying stuff and the way she's darting her eyes around the room that is bonkers, and yet she just goes for it enough.
Hello, Jason. I think I've had a change of heart.
Quite. Me?
Literally. The animal plant toxins had a rather unique effect on me. They replaced my blood with aloe, my skin with chlorophyll, and filled my lips with venom.
Compared to, say, Arnold Schwarzenegger, who I don't know what he's doing in this film.
It's so bad.
The combined power of the telescope's reflecting crystals will complete my freezing engine. Yes, No matter what they tell you, Mr. Bane, it is the size of your gun that counts. Gun.
This film is embarrassing.
I was reading that George Clooney, if anybody says to him, I watched Batman and Robin, he gives them their money back on the spot.
Well, that's an indictment. That is. Yeah, it's embarrassing to everyone. It's embarrassing for the director. It's embarrassing for the writer. The script is awful. It is like they've just put a piece of blank paper down in front of a group of school children and told them to go write a Batman film now. It is absolute tripe. Akiva Goldsman wrote it.
Yeah. Who, just somehow has a track record for stinking stuff up. Really stinking up franchises. I mean, he's one of the biggest culprits on the current Picard series, which is one of the worst wastes of film I've ever seen. He also drove Star Trek Discovery into the ground. Yeah, he's got some really awful credits in his backlist.
Credits, and they all looked like absolute stinkers. So, yeah, you're going to get a stinker.
He wrote the story for Transformers The Last Night. Now, I've not seen it, but I know the story isn't what you're going there for.
No. Oh, it's embarrassing. The performances are embarrassing, apart from maybe Uma Thurman. I mean, Alicia Silverstone, she appears about half an hour into the film, and she looks like she's just woken up from being in a coma. She looks like she's all lips. She's all hi there. She's playing an English woman with an American accent. Obviously, she's playing the niece of Alfred, played by Michael Gough, who at the time was about 80 years old. At the time, she was about 19. How does that work?
Standard.
Arnold Schwarzenegger is terrible. He's stomping around. Every other line is an icy, cold tongue. But I mean, I can't even be bothered to recite some of the lines. They are just awful.
The Iceman cometh. I'm afraid that my condition has left me cold to your pleas of mercy. You are not sending me to the cooler. What killed the dinosaurs? The Ice Age!
And he, Poison Ivy and even Bane is in this as well as some.
Yeah. This is not your Tom Hardy Bane, by the way. This is some grunting, and he is an actual wrestler. The guy who played him sadly died just after filming. Jeep Swenson, but he just is literal muscle. Can only say Bane.
Yeah, I mean, really, they didn't need to have him in, did they? Really? I mean, and you could actually say they didn't need to have Poison Ivy. They didn't need to have Batgirl. They didn't even need to have Robin. I mean, there are way too many characters. But I was trying to work out what is Poison Ivy trying to do in this film? She's trying to wipe out humanity and then replace them with plants. And then she teams up with Mr. Freeze. What's he trying to do? He's trying to save his frozen wife and also make everything into ice. And then they team up. I mean, what the hell is going on? Their goals don't overlap whatsoever. Batgirl is a university student in England, and then all of a sudden, an hour later, she's Batgirl. I mean, what the hell is going on? I don't understand what's going on in this film.
I find this with a lot of Batman films and Spider-Man films, for that matter. One villain is never enough. It's always got to be multiple villains, and it ends up fragmenting the story in an awkward way, and means that one of them always ends up being underwhelming.
Yeah, you're right, actually. Every single either Spider-Man or Batman film since the 1989 Batman film has had more than one villain in it.
Yeah, I don't get it. I really don't get it.
It never works. It never works. People didn't like Spider-Man 3 because one of the reasons is because it had too many characters and villains in it. And I mean, Batman and Robin has got It's got
too many villains and too many goodies in it as well.
It should be called Mr. Freeze and Poison Ivy and Batman and Robin and Batgirl. is what it should be called.
Well, of course, reflecting the 89 Batman, where Jack Nicholson received top billing, of course, Arnold gets top billing here.
I don't know why. He's rubbish. He really is rubbish. It made me realise, actually, he's got a great presence just generally, but he is an absolutely terrible actor. My friend Jarvis, who we had on previous episode, he absolutely loves Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I love Arnold Schwarzenegger for his campy presence, but he's in no way an actor.
Probably, I don't know this because I haven't read up on it, but I'm guessing his involvement does allow us to bring in another friend of the show from We Watch Bad Films, our old favourite from Abraxas, Jesse Ventura, who appears in just a brief scene as a prison guard and totally jesses it up.
It says the governor of California and the governor of Minnesota in one scene together.
It's a Predator reunion.
The biggest thrill for me was when we hit wardrobe, and I happened to view Arnold's wardrobe tape, and when my arms taped out 1 inch bigger than Mr. Olympia's, that made Jesse Ventura feel pretty good.
Well, I'm very happy about that, because then my joke worked. Because I told the wardrobe department they should tell him that, so I can bet him a bottle of champagne afterwards when he comes to the gym. He came to the gym 2 days later and he says, "You know something, Arnold? We should measure our arms. Who has bigger arms?" I said, "Of course we should." I said, "Let's bet a bottle of champagne." He says, "Of course we should." And then we measured it and my arm was 3 inches bigger than his.
What the fuck?
And he lost a bottle of champagne. So, I mean, you know, the psycho trips, they work on everybody, on bodybuilders and also on wrestlers. It was good.
Yeah, just in case we didn't have enough characters. I just found it just absolute tripe.
I mean, let's go right back to the beginning. What's the first thing we see? Close-up of
arse, tits and arse.
Close-up of Batman's tits and arse. Crotch shots, butt shots, nipple shots. And the very first line is a gag.
I want a car. Chicks dig the car.
This is why Superman works alone.
Okay, well, we've set the tone now, haven't we?
Yeah, there's loads of these stupid gags. Isn't there a bit where Batman flashes his goth card and the expiry date is forever?
Yeah, and he says, "Never leave home without it," or words to that effect.
I mean, what is going on? How did we get to this point? Well, it's terrible.
Talking of getting to this point, what sends me up the wall is that in just 8 years, we get Christopher Nolan's Batman Begins. It feels like 40 years between these two films. Yet in 1997, you get Batman and Robin. In 2005, you get Batman Begins. A much darker, must be said, turn on the franchise.
I think Kevin Feige, who I think he's the head of Marvel, isn't he now? He has said that Batman and Robin was the most important comic book film ever because it made all the studios realize, we can't do campy anymore because people don't like it. It's quite a sacrifice to make. When George Clooney finished filming Batman and Robin, apparently he left the set and said, "Well, we've certainly killed that franchise." And I can't believe they were able to resurrect it with Christopher Nolan.
It's quite unthinkable, really. It's quite unthinkable how they managed, in under a decade, to say, yes, we're going to greenlight another Batman film and go with it. Turns out it was a brilliant gamble. I like Batman Begins. I'm not like super crazy about it, but it did launch a whole bunch of stuff, and it remains for a lot of people that or Dark Knight Rises as their favourite Batman film / favourite Christopher Nolan film.
Yeah, they're obviously brilliant films. I would say that they're not perfect, but they're obviously really good films. Batman and Robin is a joke. It's like Carry On Batman.
Oh, so safe.
but not everyone is in on the joke. It's confusing. It is muddled, and it's embarrassing for everyone involved.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I hated it, Jay. It's not even fun because it's camp. It was
No.
annoying and boring and pointless, and I hated watching it. I didn't think I would. I thought I'd go, no, that was a stupid film. But I went, oh, I'm actually bored and I don't want to watch this anymore.
I'm so glad I could bring this into your life, Gary.
I mean, if I'd have just randomly watched it, I would have been pretty annoyed or turned it off at some point. But I'm just astonished that I watched it. I was like, I'm hating this. I hate it. And I couldn't even really put my finger on what was doing it with the crap we've sat through in this show. And yet I hated this big budget, decently okay received film. No, yeah, I'm done.
You know what it is? It comes across as one of those 90s films where I don't know why, but some of those big budget 90s films became so stupid, where everything was spectacle but nothing made sense, and they were so stupid, like Armageddon. There's a comet the size of Texas about to hit planet Earth. We're going to fly up to it and blow it up. What? I mean,
yeah,
even Jurassic Park is scientifically stupid, but at least it's a good film. But nothing in this film made sense. And there's such a cynical side to this film. It's like you can tell that they just shoved the most famous actors of the day in front of the camera, and loads of the scenes were there just to be filmed for toy and merchandise. It's just like, it's gross.
There's a lot to be said about a film made sort of immediately preceding 9/11, and I don't want to get too heavy in a podcast like this, but you can look at those films of the late 90s and there's such bombast, there's such energy, there's such excitement with a nation that is super powerful and it can do anything. And I genuinely think that's in the water as these sort of films come out, the bombastic heroism of Armageddon, of subterfuge of Jurassic Park. I'm going to take issue with your poor science there, because it wasn't that badly rooted in science. Michael Crichton did decent research for his books, but there was definitely an energy there, and I think that's part of what you can see in the Batman pre and post 9/11. I know Christopher Nolan obviously comes from a different country to Joel Schumacher, but I think there's definitely something in the whole studio behind it, and the energy in the way it's made, and the overall driving force in them. I don't think Batman Begins was made for the toy line, let's put it that way.
No. There's a Technicolor sort of Batman and Robin, which he had in the 90s, when everything was Technicolor, big, bombastic, loads of money thrown at it, and then it's dour, it's dark, it's like, oh yeah, life is annoying and really complicated, but more realistic because of it. Yeah, I just think Batman and Robin, it's just aged so badly. You
make it sound like it was great at the time.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think back at the time. Yeah, I don't even think I liked it at the time. I think I liked the Batman films, but then by the time Batman and Robin was out, it's like, oh my god. Even then, I was thinking, oh, this is rubbish.
What were you going to say about the women in Batman?
Well, the women in Batman, Batman and Robin, are perfunctory at best. I mean, obviously Uma Thurman does her bit, but she's basically the same character as the Riddler in Batman Forever. It's a put upon employee of Wayne Enterprises who is dowdy and wears glasses and lots of brown shades, and then somehow manages to transform themselves into a supervillain and struts around looking great, but really their only motivation is sort of jealousy. And the other women in Batman and Robin, I mean, Batgirl is in it for about 15 minutes with absolutely no rhyme or reason. She's rubbish. And then Elle Macpherson, the girlfriend of Bruce Wayne, is literally in 2 scenes and has no impact on the story whatsoever.
Do you know what? If I can read a quote from Roger Ebert, which is a review from 1997, and I think he just encapsulates everything we just said. My prescription for the series remains unchanged. Scale down. We don't need to see $2 million on the screen every single minute. Give the foreground to the characters, not the special effects, and ask the hard questions about Bruce Wayne. And I think you can definitely say they did that for Batman Begins. They did ask the hard questions, and they did scale it back and look at the characters.
I just want to say, I like Joel Schumacher. There's lots of films of his that I like. So I will lay some of the blame at his feet, but I get the impression it was a studio, make it really fun kind of direction. So I don't think it's totally his fault. Also, Akiva Goldsman wrote it, and you can't you can't cover up the fact that those lines are dross.
Now, speaking of lines, I would usually say, hey, come up with some quotes. I haven't got the energy to come up with any quotes from this piece of crap. Have you got any?
Neither have I. You can go online and hear all of the ice puns from Arnold Schwarzenegger. Because otherwise, if we just put up clips of what other characters are saying, people's brains will explode with boredom. The lines are terrible. The script is terrible. I wouldn't bother.
So I was going to ask you if you'd recommend Batman and Robin, Jay, officially for the record.
Absolutely not. It's a pile of poo.
No, it's awful. Don't even see it out of completeness. I'm just wondering whether I should see Batman Forever now.
Well, anything will look better after Batman and Robin. So maybe this is the best one.
That's true. Good. Okay, Jay. Well, I want to say thanks for suggesting that film, but I don't thank you in the slightest. But thanks for joining me this week to discuss it all the same. See you later, Jay.
Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.